Great, thank you. Okay, I think it's the top of the hour and ready to get things moving. Excellent. Okay, well, hi everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program Community Briefing. We want to thank you for taking the time to join us during your lunch hour, possibly for many of you. We're really excited to be in the middle of our first round of community engagement on replacing the interstate bridge on I-5 over the Columbia River. My name is Kirsten Pennington. I'm part of the Interstate Bridge Replacement team, and I'll be the host for the next hour that we have together. And before we dive in, just a few online logistics. So for folks to please note that this Zoom webinar is being recorded and streamed on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program's YouTube channel. And the recording will be available afterwards on YouTube and on the program website, which is www.interstatebridge.org. And we also wanted to share with you that closed captions are available in both English and Spanish within both Zoom and YouTube. So if you want to see closed captions, you can follow the link that I'll read in just a moment, but the English or Spanish captions will show in a separate browser window. And the address for that is https://ibr.news, NEWS/captions, CAPTIONS. So let me read that just one more time. It's https://ibr.news/captions. Thanks. And if you're watching on Zoom, the controls for closed captions are actually on the bottom of your screen. They should be toward the bottom and the middle. And if you don't see them, if you just wave your cursor over that, it should appear and you'll see a little CC box. You just click there and it'll turn on. And if you want them off, you can click it again and it'll turn back off. We also wanted to share a phone number in case people have technical difficulties at any time during this session today. So if you do experience technical difficulties, please feel free to call 503-897-9219. And I'll read that one more time. It's 503-897-9219. So let's talk a little bit about how the session's going to flow today. The goal of our time together today is to ensure a common understanding of what the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program is, understand why replacing the aging bridge is a high priority for our region, and of course, most important, understanding how your voice can help to shape the outcome in the future. And at the end of this meeting, we'll share a couple other ways that, that folks can get involved. So what we're going to do today, the meeting will be a few short presentations, and you see the presenters online. I'll introduce folks in just a moment. We have had a couple of questions come in from members of the community, so we'll share a couple of those answers. So a bit of a frequently asked question piece at the end of each presentation. And then one part that we think is really fun is several interactive audience participation questions. So this is something we're trying that's kind of fun, kind of different. It allows folks to interact real time with a variety of questions throughout our next hour together. Just to note that, to be real clear, this meeting format for the next hour doesn't have a time for oral public testimony, so it's a little bit of a different meeting in that way. This way we can hear from a broader range of people, and you'll see when we get into it. And there will be other opportunities moving forward that Kimberly is going to talk about later, of a variety of different ways of interacting with the program and helping to ensure that your voice is heard. So let me talk a little bit about how the interactive questions will work. So what you should see is some questions pop up on your screen, and you'll have the opportunity to select your top 2, and then you'll just press submit. So that's the way to answer the questions, and then we'll be able to see the responses, and I'll summarize those responses. It's important to note for this that if you're currently watching on YouTube and you want to participate in these interactive questions, you do need to be in the Zoom webinar link. So that's really important if you want to be involved with the audience participation piece of our time together. So if you're in YouTube and you want to switch over, that's totally fine. Just there should be instructions that are listed in the YouTube video description box for how to participate over Zoom webinar. Okay. So let me introduce the other folks who are here today with me. I can go to the next slide. Okay, so here today are Ray Mabey, Chris Regan, Kimberly Pinchera, and Jake War. And I'll introduce each of these folks a little bit later as we introduce their pieces of the presentation. But let's first start with our first audience participation question. So if we can pop that up there, maybe we can start getting some juices flowing. Okay. So the first participation question is around priorities. And this is an important question. We like to start with this one so that we know what's important to you, so that as we're going through our session together, we can make sure that we touch on the things that are most interesting for you. So the question is, what are you most interested in learning about in today's presentation? And you can pick up to 2 if you remember. So the options are, what is the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program? Plans for future community engagement and feedback. Potential benefits a replacement may offer. The timeline and process for considering a bridge replacement, or something else. So I'll give just a few moments, especially because this is the first one. Okay, let's see what people had to say. Okay, great. Thanks everyone for your feedback. What we're seeing here is that 75% of respondents, and I'm showing that there were 12 respondents in this case. So 75% of you were interested in the timeline and process for considering a bridge replacement. And that was followed by what is the program, what's the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, and plans for future community engagement and feedback. And then others were represented as well. So note to our team, if we can please make sure that we touch on those pieces as we move through our session today. Great. Okay, so let's move to our first presentation. I'd like to introduce our Program Assistant Administrator, Ray Mabey. Thank you, Ray.
Hey, thanks, Kirsten. I'm happy to be here with everyone. Thanks for your interest and participation. Today, I'm going to present an overview of the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. On this slide, you're seeing an aerial photo of the project area. It shows I-5 traveling north through Marine Drive Interchange across the Portland Harbor over Hayden Island into Washington and Vancouver, expanding up to about SR 500. And so the Interstate Bridge is composed of two historic crossings that no longer satisfy the needs of modern commerce and travel. The bridge serves as an important connection between communities. It's also a linchpin for state, regional, national, and national freight and commerce economies. Replacing the aging interstate bridge across the Columbia River with a seismically resilient multimodal structure that provides improved mobility for people, goods, and services has been a priority to Oregon and Washington for some time. Previous planning efforts developed a locally preferred alternative consisting of transportation solutions that met the purpose and need defined at that time. Recognizing that these transportation issues remain unaddressed, both Washington and Oregon dedicated funding to restart the interstate bridge replacement work in 2019. A program team was assembled and work began on re-engaging stakeholders in reevaluation of transportation data. The program is working to update the previously identified needs. To do this, we'll be looking at changes in regulatory and land use policy, transit operations, the built environment, existing travel demands, and community values, to name a few. Let's take a look at those previously identified needs. In this slide, you can see what's shown is asphalt that's been fractured and kind of pushed together, something that you might see as signs of an earthquake. And that's what we'll be talking about in this one, is the existing bridges are 104 and 63 years old, and they're both seismically vulnerable. Both were designed and constructed before modern seismic analysis and design methods were developed. They have vulnerabilities in the superstructure, the part you can see, the trusses, and the substructure, the part you can't see, that's supporting underground. The trusses and lift span towers weren't designed to withstand vertical and horizontal loads from an earthquake. The foundations of the bridges are comprised of timber piles, and sandy soils. And engineers have found that these soils perform poorly in large earthquakes. This area is at risk for a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. The last one in 1700 was a 9.0 magnitude. Scientists predict there's a 37% chance of a 7.1 magnitude earthquake in the next 50 years. We have concerns these bridges will not be serviceable after a major earthquake. A bridge designed to modern requirements is needed for this important crossing. This slide shows traffic going through the trusses. The title is Growing Travel Demand and Congestion. Traffic congestion continues to be a major issue within the corridor. Data from 2019 shows that traffic clogs the freeway 7 to 11 hours a day during weekdays. This is up from 3 to 4 hours a day identified in the previous effort. COVID restriction had an immediate effect on this, reducing travel and congestion. However, traffic volumes are quickly approaching pre-COVID numbers. Travel demand and congestion is expected to increase over the coming years through the project area. Long commuter travel times and reliability of freight delivery times both continue to be growing issues. The lift span, necessary to allow for river navigation of large vessels to go under the bridge, is one of a dozen stop signs on the interstates across the country and the only stop sign between Canada and Mexico on the I-5, exacerbating congestion issues. Next slide, please. This slide shows a C-Tran bus about ready to cross the bridge. And it's letting us talk about transit. And reliable transit options are limited on the bridge, actually. C-Tran has an express bus service to the Portland area from Vancouver, but its service is subject to the same delays as regular traffic due to congestion, accidents, and bridge lifts. It's difficult to have reliable travel times and service in these conditions. There is no high-capacity transit service to support broad modal choice for communities, community members, and commuters. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide shows a bicyclist daring the bridge crossing on a very narrow crosswalk or a sidewalk with the pedestrian rail on one side and the truss members of the bridge on the other. And this really lets us know that active transportation options are limited and difficult. Biking and walking across the bridge is challenging. As shown in this slide, this narrow crosswalk or sidewalk is taken up with the superstructure of the bridge, the truss members. Navigating through the project area, whether biking, walking, or rolling, is far from ideal. Modern facilities for walking, biking, and rolling are needed to provide accessible and safe active transportation options. This slide shows a line drawing of the interchanges on the program area. Excuse me. The largest distance between interchanges in the 5 mile area is 9/10 of a mile. That's actually the crossing over the main river. And the shortest is 1/2 mile, and that's a crossing over the Portland Harbor area. It also shows an image of emergency responder vehicles tending to an accident on the bridge. The program area does continue to have one of the highest accident rates in the state. The outdated design contributes to these high rates. There are 7 closely spaced interchanges, as I note, all within that 5 mile program area. There's limited shoulders, narrow travel lanes, and there is a hump on the bridge that limits how far ahead drivers can see. The close interchanges and short on and off ramps make merging into traffic difficult. On top of all this, and in these conditions, traffic on the interstate has to come to a stop due to bridge loads. These high accident rates are preventable, though, with a new bridge, including modern connections. I appreciate the opportunity to connect with you all today. I'll turn it back to you, Kirsten.
Great. Thank you so much, Ray. That was really comprehensive and helpful to lay a foundation for our conversation this afternoon. If you can put yourself back off mute, I do have a question for you. We've been monitoring some of our social media, and we've been getting a common question on our Facebook feed, actually. And so I thought I'd pitch that to you, Ray, so that all of our attendees can hear it at once. So the question that we've heard a lot is, why not build a new third bridge in addition to the I-5 and I-205 bridges, instead of replacing the existing I-5 bridge?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I appreciate the opportunity to address it. A third bridge wouldn't solve the problems we face, the ones we just reviewed, within the existing interstate bridge. It wouldn't solve our problems with the existing bridge. I-5 provides a critical connection between Oregon and Washington, and it supports local jobs and families. It's a vital trade route for regional, national, and international economies. And since the I-5 corridor won't be relocated, it's important to ensure that the bridge is safe and meets the needs of our communities. The third bridge may address other issues that are actually beyond the scope of this work. It would be for others to consider.
Okay, thank you so much, Ray. That's helpful. All right, let's go to our next audience participation question. And this one is about current problems, or what are the issues that you see with the existing interstate bridge? So the question is, what are your concerns with the existing interstate bridge and the options that you have to pick from? Remember, you can pick up to 2. And also remember, if you are on YouTube, you need to be on the Zoom webinar. So there are instructions in YouTube how to do that in case you want to participate. So the options are earthquake vulnerability, limited public transit, transportation safety, congestion and reliability, inadequate bike or pedestrian paths or ways, impaired freight movement, or other. Okay, let's see what people had to say. Okay, we had a few more respondents this time. We had 16 total respondents, so thank you very much. The overwhelming majority, 94%, selected congestion and reliability as a top concern. Others selected, 44% selected earthquake vulnerability, 31% inadequate bike and pedestrian paths, 25% limited public transit, and then 6% limited public transit, impaired freight movement, and other. So all concerns represented in the poll. Well, thank you for this. This helps us understand what's important to you. And as we move through the program, that's one of the key reasons that the team is engaging in a two-way dialogue with the community. This is really important information. So thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, next up we have Chris. Chris Regan is our environmental manager for the program. And Chris is going to talk a little bit about the environmental process and the timeline, which was something, I think that was the top item that people were interested in, Chris, and knowing about at the top of our meeting. So if you can make sure to cover that thoroughly, that will be fantastic. We also will learn how your feedback can help shape the environmental process moving forward. So Chris, you're up. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about the timeline. I think we should just jump right in and take a look. So for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, it's really important oftentimes when you're trying to figure out where you are and where you're going to look back at where you've been. And for us, it's absolutely true because between 2004 and 2014, prior planning efforts that led to an environmental impact statement through our environmental process for a Columbia River crossing led us through an environmental impact statement to a final environmental impact statement and something that our federal government calls a record of decision. Now that document had a lot of details in it, but in 2014, that document and the project itself was put on the shelf. About a year ago, we started talking about that again, trying to figure out, how do we develop funding? What are the elements of that? And how do we advance the program to an interstate bridge replacement? That's where we are today. So for the next couple years, we're going to be working on planning and environmental efforts to shape what that looks like so that we can hand it off in 2024 to our designers, which will lead to 2025, our construction. So we're hoping to get to construction by 2025. It's important to realize, however, that underlying all of these efforts, including the past efforts, our current efforts, and where we're going from here, community engagement is a foundation. So we're really glad you're here taking an interest and providing us with some of your feedback. Next slide, please. And for the environmental process, it's really important that community engagement is a solid part of that. The environmental process is known as the National Environmental Policy Act. That was a process that was created to ensure that for any given project, the public has a voice and the environmental impacts are studied. We have two pictures on the screen here. One is a typical example of what community engagement looks like outside of quarantine, our existing reality. And the other one shows that the National Environmental Policy Act really was based on two pillars. The National Environmental Policy Act is a law that's 50 years old. And around the time that it was created, there was a lot of environmental impacts happening in the nation that were going unchecked. And there were also projects that were going forward without the opportunity for the public to provide feedback. So the law was created in 1970 to create those two pillars. Before a decision is made, decision makers must understand the environmental impacts, and they must provide an opportunity for the community to provide feedback for the project before it goes forward. Next slide, please. So community engagement is critical to all aspects of the program, especially at this early stage. So in 2021, we need your support in the following activities to help shape future alternatives. The first thing we're going to do is update our purpose and need for our project. Now, that's an element of the National Environmental Policy Act. It's also necessary to proceed to alternatives. The purpose and need is the statement of why we're doing the project and the deficiencies we're trying to address. Ray went into great detail talking about each need statement, and that's what we're doing right now, is updating those. The other thing that we're going to do is establish community visions and values. Those visions and values are going to help us define how to screen alternatives as they advance from concepts to meet the purpose and need, to on-the-ground construction concepts to go forward for the Interstate Bridge replacement. Next slide, please. To get us to this, we've got 3 groups helping us. We have an executive steering group that provides regional leadership guidance and recommendations on key program development topics. And we have 2 advisory groups. An equity advisory group that provides insight and input on the program's processes, approaches, and decisions that may affect historically underserved and underrepresented communities. We also have a community advisory group that provides input and feedback reflective of the community's needs, issues, and concerns to influence program outcomes. Next slide, please. And right now, what we're focused on with these groups is jumping in and updating our purpose and need. As I said, the purpose is a statement that concisely identifies what the proposed action is intended to accomplish. And it's got to be stated broadly enough so that more than one solution can be considered. And then our need statements. Our need statements provide evidence of deficiencies or problems. It explains why the proposed action has been undertaken, and it identifies existing or expected future problems within a defined area. As Ray went through in more detail, the previously identified purpose and needs included seismic vulnerability, inadequate bicycle and pedestrian facilities, limited public transportation operation, connectivity and reliability, growing travel demand and congestion, safety and vulnerability to incidents, and impaired freight movement. Next slide. After we establish the purpose and need, we're also going to develop community vision and values. And these vision and values are the foundation for developing criteria and performance measures to evaluate the alternatives. Previously, we identified a number of visions and values, and we're looking at those as well as expanding beyond this. So we identified community livability or quality of life, mobility, reliability, accessibility, congestion reduction and efficiency, modal choice, safety, regional economy and freight mobility, stewardship of natural and human resources, the distribution of impacts and benefits, also known as equity, cost effectiveness and financial resources, and bi-state cooperation. So what we're doing, getting into the nuts and bolts here, is we're evaluating our prior planning. On this graphic, you can see on the left-hand side, our prior planning developed purpose and need statements and developed its own vision and values. Right now, we're looking at, in the middle, what has changed. Are there planning and regulatory policies and goals that have changed? How do we update things? Looking at data and providing additional analysis to see if there's more evidence of deficiencies and where we need to go. Using our previous MEPA work to identify constraints and commitments, again, over 10 years of work, had a lot of agreements and a lot of focus on those environmental impacts. And then also looking at updated community and values. We're taking that and we're getting feedback and recommendations from community engagement as a whole, our community advisory group, equity advisory group. We're talking to regulatory agencies, tribes, our executive steering group, and also the bi-state legislative committee overseeing our project. When we look at what has changed, we're going to carry those forward into the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program's purpose and need, and the vision and values. The previously identified transportation problems that have been resolved, looking at new transportation problems that have emerged. For the vision and values, defining program success, reflecting community values, and identifying local goals and targets. All of this together feeds us into asking the question, how are our purpose and need and vision and values applied to the IBR program? We're going to document why changes require new solutions, establish evaluation criteria to screen alternatives, evaluate prior alternatives and inform development of new alternatives, and identify and modify a locally preferred alternative that we will carry forward for the interstate bridge replacement. And I think that's probably it for me, Kirsten.
Okay. Thank you. Lots of great information, Chris. Appreciate it. And hey, we have a question for you as well, Chris. So another question that we've been getting a lot from community members is, how will the new bridge be funded, and will there be tolls as part of that funding?
And that's definitely an important question. Given the scarcity of federal and state funding that we have for large transportation projects nationwide, it's assumed that any bridge replacement alternative will require funding from a diverse range of sources. And that includes federal grants, tolling, and state funds from both Oregon and Washington. We've created a financial plan that balances cost estimates, or we're working on one, and potential funding sources we're going to update as our work continues to identify and analyze the river crossing and transit alternatives. The program scope will ultimately be tailored to align with available funding, but yes, tolling is part of that equation right now.
Okay, thanks, Chris, for clarifying that for everyone. I know that's been a very common question, so it's good to hear from the program on that. Appreciate it. Okay, next audience participation opportunity is coming right up. This one is about priorities again. And this one is asking about which of the following you view as an important priority to address as we consider options for the interstate bridge. And the options are supporting jobs in the economy, reducing traffic congestion, ensuring earthquake safety, offering choices for how people can travel, so car, transit, walking, biking, or rolling, evaluating the potential impact on neighboring communities, improving road safety, or minimizing environmental and/or climate impacts. So remember, you get to pick up to 2, and we'll wait just a few moments to see what you all have to say about your priorities.
And Kirsten, something I just noticed on my poll is I need to scroll down to see all the options.
Oh,
So you might
thanks
need
so
to
much.
do that.
That's not happening on mine, so that's really good to know. Thank you. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. It looks like this time around we had 19 respondents, and the leading response was reducing traffic congestion at 58% of those 19. And that was followed pretty closely by several other priorities. So 42% was offering choices for how people can travel, 37% evaluating impact on neighboring communities, 32% ensuring earthquake safety, 16% minimizing environmental and/or climate impacts, and then at 11% improving road safety and supporting jobs in the economy. Great. Well, that is all going to feed into how we communicate and how we connect with the community about the pieces and intricacies of this program. So it's very helpful to understand where your priorities are. Okay, next up, Jake, is you. Our next presenter is Jake War, transportation planner with lots of expertise in centering equity and inclusion in public projects. And Jake's going to talk about how equity is infused into the program, into everything and into the day-to-day. So Jake, you are up.
All right, thanks, Kirsten. And hi, everybody. I'm hoping that we'll have a poll question soon that asks about how hungry we are, and I know what my answer will be. Yours is probably the same. So as Kirsten said, I'm going to talk about how equity is a priority for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program and what that actually means in practice for us. So next slide, please. First, I'm going to address what we kind of are required to do at a federal level to be eligible for funding from the federal government, from the U.S. Department of Transportation. The guidance that they provide is as follows. They need us to ensure the full and fair participation by all potentially affected communities. We need to avoid, minimize, or mitigate disproportionately high and adverse human health and environmental effects. And that includes impacts socially and economically on minority or low-income populations, and prevent the denial of, reduction in, or significant delay in the receipt of benefits by minority and low-income populations. So that's kind of our floor as far as what we're required to do in terms of regulation. But that to us isn't quite centering equity as far as we want to go and what we're committed to do as part of this program. So next slide, please. As we're thinking more broadly and more comprehensively about equity, we want to move beyond compliance, and we want to change this frame. A few things that we're thinking about that kind of capture our approach. We're wondering how might a project look if instead of just looking at disproportionate burdens or negative impacts, what if we looked at how it could disproportionately benefit historically marginalized communities? What would it look like if we really centered the voices of those communities in our engagement and processes? And then also in terms of processes, planning, engagement, construction, design, all that stuff, if the processes themselves that we go through to get there, what if those were considered concrete outcomes? So that we can really make sure that we're honoring our commitment there. And on here, I have a picture of a mural actually in Massachusetts that shows some advocates for transit in their community. Next slide, please. So a few really concrete ways of how we are trying to center equity and honor that commitment. First, we are grounding the program in the history of the river, the I-5 corridor, and the region. We know that the river has been historically home to indigenous communities for thousands of years, and those communities have been displaced. We know that the I-5 corridor, the construction of I-5 led to the displacement of many communities, many people, and was done in a way that really put a wedge between neighborhoods. We have a chief equity officer, John L. Bell, who leads the team that I'm a part of. My title is equity program lead, but he is the true leader on this, aside from our program administrator, because we want to make sure that equity is, as our program administrator says, it's everybody's responsibility. It's not just this equity program team, but we're there to help guide it. We've established an equity advisory group to guide the program towards equitable processes and outcomes. This group is made up of community members, representatives of community organizations, and our program partners, equity experts from those partners. So they are helping us develop a program-specific definition of equity so that we all know what we're actually saying when we say equity, as well as looking at our community engagement strategies and other components of the program to see how we can really infuse equity. We are developing and implementing really inclusive and intentional community engagement strategies that are meaningful, that we can reach folks who are traditionally kind of harder to meet, and including in a virtual environment, trying to develop strategies that make our processes more accessible. And that includes language accessibility and inclusion. We are translating materials into 8 different languages as just regular practice. And then of course, anyone who requests information in a different language, we can accommodate because we don't want that to be a barrier to engaging with us. We're also really focusing on accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities. Something you might have noticed that we're trying to do here in this briefing is describing images and making sure we read what's on the slides. We have heard from the community that that's important for engaging those who have low vision or who are blind, because they might have assistive technology like screen readers, but actually that's not something that can read a shared screen on Zoom. So we want to make sure that that's accessible, as well as captions for those who are deaf or hard of hearing. And then my team is also leading some education and training for the program staff to help, develop our capacity, increase our capacity for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what that means, because like I said, and like our program administrator says, equity is everyone's responsibility. So we really want to honor that. I believe that is my last slide there.
Thanks, Jake. Hey, I'm wondering if you would be willing to share something with everyone that you've learned about the communities in the program area as part of your role.
What a great question. Where did that come from, I wonder? Something I did want to share that has been really interesting to me, and a member of our equity advisory group raised to us as we were talking about language translation and the communities in the corridor. There's a community of Chuukese speaking folks in Vancouver, and that was a language and an ethnicity that I actually wasn't familiar with. It's folks from Micronesia, and there's a strong community. So we have added that as one of our languages, and we are looking at strategies to engage that community as effectively as we can.
Great. Thank you, Jake.
Thanks.
Okay, we have our next audience participation opportunity. Jake, this one is not food related, but maybe we have some of those at the end. I don't know. We'll have to see. Folks will have to stick with us till the end of the hour to see if that comes about or not. This participation opportunity is about equity. And the question is, which of the following communities do you have connections to that you might be willing to share information with the program about? And the options are Black, Indigenous, and/or other communities of color, people who would like to engage in a language besides English, people who are experiencing low income, people with disabilities, people who are older, people who are younger, or other. We'll give just a few moments. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, out of 11 respondents, folks responded older adults. People have connections with older adults and with other. And then with other categories and communities that we asked about, people have lots of connections there as well. So thank you very much. This helps us infuse this finding into how we conduct our program. Appreciate it. All right. Next up, I think we have our program communications manager, Kimberly Pinchera, who's going to cover some of our community engagement strategies and ways to have your voice be heard. So Kimberly, I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kirsten. And if we can go ahead and move to the next slide. My fellow panelists here have done a really great job of setting me up for this section of the program. So thank you to Chris for outlining really how critical community engagement is for the process itself and how it really does inform the work that we do throughout the program. And then, as Jake just gave a really great overview of how we've really been intentionally trying to center equity in all aspects of our program work. And that certainly carries over into the community engagement and all of our outreach efforts. So along with equity, we are also really focused on some kind of fundamental principles, and that includes diversity, accessibility, transparency, and inclusion. And you'll see those up on the screen. They're represented as, circles with arrows around them, connecting them to the other principles. And that's really to symbolize how interconnected all of those principles really are, and how we are really taking all of our work and looking at it through the lens of these principles and saying, are we upholding these values in the work that we're doing? And are there ways that we can be improving and doing better? So Jake also did a great job of, outlining how we're already adjusting, right, some of our outreach and some of our techniques as we learn. So as we're hearing from our advisory groups and from the public that there are ways we can be doing better, in certain areas, we are really taking that to heart and really trying to be nimble and to update our approach to really be doing the best job that we can. And so really, the key takeaway here is at the end of the day, all of these efforts are really trying to ensure that we are hearing from the broadest range possible of our community members. So we know that there are a number of different perspectives out there in terms of what does success look like at the end of the day for this program? What is that ultimate solution? And people are coming at that based on their own background. So we are trying to offer a number of ways to engage, but also trying to hear as many voices as possible so that we are really understanding what are all of those different needs of the different types of users of the bridge, as well as what are all the different lived experiences and backgrounds, that our community members have, so that as we do our program work and move towards that solution, we are really identifying what is going to be that successful solution for the community to really meet community needs and really reflect the values of our community. So next slide, please. So this, I will walk through these. This is a little bit of a long list, but this is really trying to demonstrate some of the different tools that we are using to reach people and to make it easy for people to plug in and provide input on the program. So most of these are current activities that we actually have underway now. A couple of them I'll note at the end are ones that we intend to incorporate as we move along a little bit farther down the road this year. So right now, as was already outlined previously, we have 3 different groups that are helping to provide recommendations to inform decisions on the program. So that's our executive steering group, our community advisory group, and our equity advisory group. All 3 of those groups meet in virtual public meetings. So all of those meetings are open to the public. For those who aren't able to participate in the live events, the video recordings from those meetings are always available afterward on our website, along with all of the meeting materials. So we are really trying to be transparent and accessible and make sure that everyone has access to that information. We're also right now in a really concentrated phase of our community engagement. So as Chris outlined, we are working to update the purpose and need and establish the vision and values for the program, which is a really critical key milestone for the program. And so as we see those key milestones throughout the timeline with our program development, those kind of key milestones are where we'll concentrate some additional community engagement efforts and hold specific activities such as this live briefing, but also such as the online open house and interactive survey that we also have underway. And I'll talk to those in a little bit more detail on other slides. But those will be areas where we are really going out and specifically asking the public to weigh in. And that's another key component of our work, is we are trying to be very open and clear about how can public engagement influence decisions. And part of that is at key milestones such as this, where we are specifically looking for public input to inform those decisions. So I mentioned the next one is live virtual events, so such as this. And so we will look at, again, throughout the year, does this format work well? If we get feedback that we might want to consider other formats, we'll certainly consider that. So we might do other types of events moving forward, but we'll certainly always try to offer other opportunities for people to either get information and or give input in events as well. And we're also working directly with multicultural, outreach liaisons, to Jake's point, that we are trying to be proactive in directly reaching communities of concern. So we're not just relying on our overall public engagement efforts. We are working with community members to directly connect with to folks that might not typically have their voice heard, and make sure that we are getting their input on the program. So we're also working with community-based organizations and doing outreach to them, asking them to help share these opportunities to engage and information about the program within their networks. So again, recognizing that our reach might not be comprehensive. We know it's not, and we do want to partner with our community partners and other organizations to help spread the word as much as possible. We are also being very proactive on our social media platforms, recognizing that also reaches different community members. People get their information in different ways through different avenues. So we are really trying to make sure that both in our information sharing and also in our outreach to get the word out about events and engagement opportunities, that we're looking at a variety of platforms and a variety of tools, to get the word out through different means. So that also includes proactive media outreach, and that is something that we have been very targeted, trying to go proactively to our media partners to help spread the word about these opportunities as well. We're also doing direct email notifications. So that includes e-newsletters and also just regular e-updates, reminders, about events and opportunities as well. And we're also right now to get the word about the specific time frame where we're really trying to ask people to weigh in on purpose and need and vision and values. We have a comprehensive advertising campaign that includes, as I mentioned, kind of a range of different tools to help get the word out. So that includes digital, print, direct mail, and radio advertising. And as we move down the road a little bit later this year, we'll also be looking to fold in some additional ideas and tools, such as working groups, focus groups, discussion groups, things that let us have a very targeted conversation on really specific topics. We're exploring the idea of doing a video storytelling campaign or a podcast series, and kind of looking at some of those creative ways that we can engage with people, again, in just a different way than we might not normally do. Next slide, please. So I have mentioned this. So right now we have two kind of key pieces of engagement ongoing. So one is the online open house. So this opened last week, and it will remain open through March 1st. And you'll see on the screen is just a screenshot of the online open house that you can access through our website. It's featured pretty prominently on the homepage, which again is www.interstatebridge.org. And this is really designed to give people access to the background and information on the program. So for folks who might not have been able to attend one of these live events and these briefings, is really intended to kind of bring people up to speed and provide people the foundation that they need to really understand where we are in the process, what is the timeline moving forward, and how to provide comments and input. So this is available online in 8 different languages, in addition to English. So that includes Russian and Ukrainian, Chinese, both simplified and traditional, Somali, Korean, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And there is an opportunity to provide direct input through the online open house itself, but it's also really asking people to take the time to participate in that interactive survey, which I'll discuss on the next slide in just a second. And that really is where we're going to dig into some more details. So next slide, please. So this interactive survey is available through the same time frame, so through March 1st. And really this is asking the community to give us more detailed information on purpose and need, value. So helping us identify what the transportation problems are that we need to address, where they specifically see issues and what their personal experience is, and really helping identify, again, those priorities and what we should be taking into consideration as we're establishing the community vision and values. So this, because of the platform, we were limited to 3 languages for the online platform for this one. So it is available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese on the website. But then we also have printed copies available in the same 8 languages that I already mentioned. And our multicultural liaisons also have copies of those surveys that they can help community members either fill out, or they can help mail them and just make them accessible. So the program team, I should note, can also make those printed copies available either in other languages or in English to community members who might need them. And so for anyone needing assistance, either completing the survey or to request it in another format, we do have a number of folks can call, excuse me, which is 888-503-6735. Okay, next slide, please. And so in addition to these kind of really specific opportunities to engage that we are, really asking for right now, for input through the online open house and the survey, we will always have, community engagement opportunities ongoing throughout the life of the program. So in between kind of these key milestones where we're proactively out there asking for people to participate in surveys or other types of engagement opportunities, we always want to hear from the public. And there are a number of ways that people can provide input and get engaged. We have mentioned the advisory groups and executive steering group are always open to the public, and every one of those meetings provides opportunity for public input, either before, at the meeting, or after the meeting. And you can access all of the meeting events and logistics to participate on our website at www.interstatebridge.org/calendar. And you can also sign up. I mentioned we have our direct email notification, so you can sign up for updates on the program and opportunities to engage on our contact list, which is available at www.interstatebridge.org/contact. And then our team is always available. So whether you want to provide input or ask a question, you can always either email or call the team. And the email address is info, I-N-F-O, @interstatebridge.org. And we actually have 3 phone numbers. I'll just read the toll-free one that members in either Oregon or Washington can contact us at 888-503-6735. And with that, I think that is my last slide, Kirsten.
Okay. Thanks so much, Kimberly, for that overview. And I do have a question for you also to follow up. And this is based on some of the questions we've heard from the community. And it is around who is involved in actually making the decisions for the program. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely,
Please.
great question. I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record because I am going to say, public engagement really is such a critical piece of our work. So certainly, the program work is happening in collaboration with a number of local, state, and federal partners. That includes direction and guidance from the governors and legislators in both states. So there are certain aspects that will be guided, by those, by that direction and by others. But really, at the end of the day, we cannot emphasize how important community engagement is. So all of the discussions happening at our advisory groups and our steering group are really informed by that public input. So whether you're providing feedback directly to those groups and or directly to the program office, or looking at these other opportunities to engage, we are not just checking the box, right? This really does inform the decisions. And we know that, again, to be successful, we need it to reflect the community.
Great. Thank you, Kimberly. And actually that dovetails really nicely with our last engagement opportunity of the afternoon. And you should see the question up on the screen, and I'll read it as well. This is around engagement. And this one's really important because it helps us to understand and design our engagement to make sure that it's valuing what you value and coming to engage with you in the ways that you want to be engaged with. So the question is, how do we meet our community where they are and listen to what is important? Again, you can pick up to 2, and the options are through virtual or in-person events. Of course, this would be when it's safe to get together again, which we're really looking forward to. use social media, providing access to team members, phone calls, office hours, things like that, seeking input through surveys, or other. Okay, let's see what folks had to say. Okay, the overwhelming majority, 86%, wanted to do virtual or in-person events, and we can't wait to get together with you in person. We really can't. So that will definitely be something we're looking at as the program moves forward. And then in terms of the other responses, healthy responses to the rest of them, the options. So again, thank you for responding to that. It's really helpful as we craft our engagement strategy moving forward. We are coming up on the top of the hour, so just want to round us out here. We can go to the closing slide. Just want to thank everybody. Thanks for your time. We know you're busy. We know you have a full life and lots of things going on right now. So are really honored that you took the time to spend with us to learn more about the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Again, please feel free to engage on our website with the ongoing online open house and survey, which run through March 1st. Again, www.interstatebridge.org. Your input is really important, and we, again, are so thankful that you spent time with us today to learn some more about our program. Please stay healthy and well, and take care, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks all.
Thank you.